Dr. Lewis, prior to your involvement in the Teachers of Tomorrow Club, could you describe who was involved in working with the students?
Well, I became involved with the School of Education Undergraduate Students Club around 1999. Before then, Stacia Pusey, who is now our assistant dean, was the person most involved with the students, I recall. However, it was Professor Jim Newar who was instrumental in helping to formalize the meetings of the students into a club. And that actually occurred in spring of 2000.
How did the club get its name, Teachers of Tomorrow? And what were the goals of the club?
Well, I recall in spring 2000, Ms. Christina Maletta Della Tola, who was the president of the club at that time, came up with the name when the club had to be officially registered with the Office of Student Affairs. Student clubs are always designated as either an undergraduate or a graduate club because they came under different governance structures. Undergraduate clubs came under the USG, Undergraduate Student Government, while graduate student clubs came under the GSC, the Graduate Student Council. Now, at that time, there was not much debate about the name. We were more focused on organizing meaningful sessions for the students. It was only until later that we discovered another entity at the Department of Education in New York City was using the same name. Hence, now the need to conduct a name change for TOT. I recall that the goals of TOT were, one, to allow representatives of education students to have a voice in curriculum decisions in the education department. Secondly, to share information relevant to becoming certified and to prepare education students for their future role as professional educators. Third, to build a bridge from pre-service to classroom teaching. And lastly, to attract and retain students in the School of Education programs. Now, to accomplish these goals, students engage in a variety of activities, which I will be describing later.
Dr. Lewis, you stated that one of the goals of the Teachers of Tomorrow Club was to provide students access to information. How does the club go about doing that?
The TOT Club helped to fill that gap in several ways. First, by holding information sessions with key personnel from the School of Education Administration. For example, the club invited Stacia Pusey to the information sessions where she informed students about the steps they should take to ensure they completed their program on time, answer questions about required courses and the different measures. Also provide information about degree requirements, scholarships, and questions related to the School of Education and CCNY academic policies. Then when Dr. Bruce Billig was appointed director of the Office of Clinical Practice, Dr. Billig and Norris Rodriguez or other staff members were invited to speak about student teaching requirements and the process. It was important for students to know when they were to student teach, how many hours were involved, and the expectations for fulfilling this critical requirement, because they need to make decisions about their work if it impacted their jobs. Information on job opportunities and field experience requirements were also made available at these sessions. I myself also provide information about certification exams and the seat, information on what tests were required and what preparation materials and workshops were available. Now, over the years, other faculty members also became involved with the club, including Professor Catherine Franklin, Bruce Kans, and later Professor, you yourself, Professor Randy Brosen. Secondly, the TOT Club organized panel discussions with former graduates. I recall that the first panel involving School of Education graduates occurred in the spring 2000. In fact, this was one of the first activity organized by the Teachers of Tomorrow. In the panel session hosted in 2003, the panelists were Ms. Linda Cruz, who was a 1995 School of Ed graduate, Ms. Daphne Charles, a 2000 graduate, Carol Borges Harper, a 2000 graduate, and Ms. Arlene Chan, who was also a 2000 graduate. These sessions were very popular because students were very eager to hear what their colleagues, who were now actually classroom teachers, had to say about their actual classroom experiences, and if they felt prepared. What is interesting is to see that some of the same questions that students asked then are the questions they even ask now. For example, what do you recommend us to do? Go straight to the master's or to start exercising our profession and then think about the master's later? Also, can you offer creative solutions for implementing lesson plans for a school that has a designated curriculum asked for Department of Education? Third, is it true that once I am hired in a particular region, that I'm locked into that school district region? And if so, what is the procedure to switch regions or districts? And lastly, what are some of the support programs that are in place for first-year teachers? Also, even before the Office of Clinical Practice was what it is today, TOT on several occasions invited recruiters from the New York City Board of Education to meet with students for information sessions about transitioning into the teaching profession. These sessions were organized on several occasions until the Office of Clinical Practice included the DE personnel into the student teaching orientation, and then it became unnecessary to continue. This early success of the TOT Club was even recognized by the Office of Student Life when 14 club leaders, including the current TOT president, who was at that time Ms. Lauren Morrow, were selected to lunch with the president of CCNY, who at that time was Dr. Gregory Williams. The clubs were selected because of their focus on improving academic excellence on campus. And this early recognition actually helped the club to secure funding for future programs and activities.
How did the students decide what programs and activities they wanted to have?
That's an interesting question. Actually, in 2004, when the undergraduate education students were asked in a survey what type of programs they wanted the club to be involved in, it was clear that having more access to the right information as early as possible was the highest priority. According to that survey, the highest priority showed that 86% of them wanted access to information on School of Ed programs. 76% wanted information about education policy changes. 66 wanted information in 3 areas: information on the teaching profession, information on certification exams, and information on access to resources such as the computer labs. What is interesting is while the least items that were a priority for these students at that time were: 1, getting involved in club activities; 2, participating in School of Ed committees; and 3, collaborating with other clubs on campus. Now, the fact that these were the least important needs for these students at that point was not really surprising, given that most of them were at the end of their program, and they were therefore anxious about being able to complete their program in a timely fashion. But as we responded by making efforts to recruit and engage students earlier, even before they formally were admitted into their program, as a result, students became involved earlier and for a longer period of time. This certainly helped students to change their perspective about TOT and how they engage in the club. In fact, they began to really appreciate and value additional experiences in their professional preparation beyond just the academics.
I learned that students sometimes took the initiative to organize training sessions to address a dire need. Could you give an example of when that might have occurred, Dr. Lewis?
Yes, actually, there were occasions when students felt very strongly about an issue and requested more support to augment their preparation. I remember in the spring of 2010, just after the ETP assessments were introduced, students voiced concern about the assessments being used in the public schools. They themselves, as new teachers, wanted to feel more comfortable about those assessments. And so the TOT Club applied for and received a grant of $1,200 from AEC, the Auxiliary Enterprise Corporation, to conduct a training session. The persons invited to conduct these training sessions included Ms. Hazeline Anthony, who at that time was an AP at PS 135, Adam Clayton School, and also an adjunct in the leadership program. Ms. Sanjay Neufeld, who was also an AP at MS 244, and an adjunct also in the special ed program. Also Ms. Odetta Santiago, who was a teacher at the Nyack Middle School. Now, these seasoned professionals, they organized a hands-on training workshop for students and therefore helped to expose them to the authentic classroom assessments. They felt much more prepared after the end of that session. Also, other student-led initiatives were town hall meetings and open forums. I recall that during the, when Mary Driscoll was dean, they initiated a School of Ed forum that focused on the ETPA review because they were so anxious about the ETPA assessment at that time.
What were some of the ways the club collaborated with other groups on campus?
Now, I think I may have mentioned that one of the benefits for collaboration among student clubs was to obtain funding for club activities. Clubs did receive points for their efforts to collaborate or when they offered campus-wide programs each year. And so in the fall of 2005, when Hurricane Katrina and Hurricane Rita ravaged Louisiana and other states on the East Coast, including New York City, the TOT rose to the occasion and organized fundraisers to support campus-wide efforts to respond to this national disaster. In fact, the TOT fundraiser at that time was entitled Penny Pincher. They also joined other clubs across the campus to support the Cohen Powell Community Engagement Fellow, who was the organizer for Water for Schools project. And she was raising funds to support a nonprofit organization that was engaged in building wells in communities in Africa and other places where access to clean water was very much needed. What I recall earlier also was that there actually was a graduate education reading club, and Miss Marion Mills was the advisor of that club. TOT collaborated with that club in reading sessions also, and that occurred, I believe, around 2002. In 2013, TOT organized a dining etiquette workshop, hands off the table, with Miss Joyce Connolly Simmons. Ms. Simmons was the organizer for the CCNY role model program on this campus. And in fact, several members were also participants in the role model program that was co-sponsored by the New York Coalition of 100 Black Women. Halloween time also was a time when the club members had their own Halloween parties, they had lots of fun, but they also made time to join with the Office of Student Affairs and other clubs to transform the space in the NAC into an area with fun activities for school children in the community who are also celebrating Halloween.
Dr. Lewis, the Teachers of Tomorrow Club has really helped many of our students develop a sense of community. What do you think has contributed to this reality?
You know, that's an interesting question because I believe that students needed a place and a space to socialize, to unwind, to have fun. They found that in the TOT meeting space as they played games, planned activities, worked hard in their fundraising activities. It was truly a learning experience for many as they learned to work together, to assign responsibilities, and to pick up the slack when someone else fell short. They were learning to build a community of learners and leaders. And this is extremely important, particularly for the community campuses, where there are fewer opportunities than residential campuses for them to interact outside of the classroom setting. It helps them to hone their skills at planning, organizing, and executing. I recall that in fall of 2018, the TOT invited the New York State Collision of Concerned Legal Professionals to organize a screening of the Central Park 5 here on campus and in the NAC space. Eric Siff, who was one of the attorneys who successfully appealed the New York criminal case that won the release of the 5 innocent youths who were wrongfully imprisoned for a crime they did not commit, he was on hand to answer the sobering questions at the end of the screening. Now, that powerful discussion at the conclusion of the screening left the audience sober, informed, but very much aware of the disparities in the justice system. Actually, several TOT members reciprocated by volunteering their time at the Legal Aid Center that is located in the Bronx. And they assisted the organization's ongoing efforts to renovate their office. TOT members also engage in cancer walks and aid walks in the communities to raise funds and to bring awareness of the seriousness of these health issues and to encourage the public to take them more seriously, particularly in the minority communities. TOT members also engage in children's health and fitness expos in 5 Mile Classic races. They were truly engaged in community activities outside of the classroom. They also collaborated with the Men-Teach program. I'm always amazed at how the students themselves sell the Men-Teach program. Not only do they speak highly of it, but many TOT members are also part of that program. In fact, many of them took the opportunity to travel with the TOT group on the Cape Cod trip. They also engaged and shared information about tutoring opportunities, particularly the Practice Makes Perfect tutoring program. That program is highly regarded by our students. And many of them have worked with the company in various roles while they were in school. In fact, through the efforts of Matthew Romano, Practice Makes Perfect made a significant contribution of $1,000 to the club when it was raising funds for the Cape Cod trip. It was very much appreciated. But then Winter Wishes, in the fall of 2015, members of the TOT club participated in the New York Cares Winter Wishes program. Now, this is how Marie, Angeline Malinga, and Elizabeth Pina described it. They said that the TOT club is a club that prepares future teachers like us to be the best at what we are passionate about. We offer a wide range of activities that aim to help the members engage in various enrichment activities, workshops, seminars, and much more. One of the goals of Teachers of Tomorrow is not only to provide support to its members, but also to the community. In the fall of 2015, we actually participated in an event called Winter Wishes. The Teachers of Tomorrow Club partnered with New York Cares, a company that aims to meet pressing community needs by mobilizing caring New Yorkers in volunteer service. They were able to work together with this organization to make some children's Christmas wishes come true by responding to their letters to Santa Claus. It is the support offered to members and the services we provide to our community that distinguish the Teachers of Tomorrow Club. Caring and pushing for a better tomorrow is our goal, but creating a family is what we do.
could you talk a little bit about the campus trips that the Teachers of Tomorrow organized and how they came about?
I'll just mention two of the trips that the students made, and they will share their experiences about the others. The first off-campus trip was organized actually by Lisa Yu, and Lisa was president of TOT in 2010. She and the board and other members of the club worked tirelessly to plan activities for the club. As a child in education major, Lisa thought it would be a good idea to expose her peers to off-campus educational experiences. And since many of them had not visited the Washington Mall before, Lisa, who was full of life and full of energy, worked with the TOT members to organize the trip to Washington, D.C., and this actually was in 2010. They organized and held a number of fundraisers to raise funds to offset the cost of the trip for the students. So eventually, about 24 TOT members and friends went on that first trip to Washington, D.C. They visited the Washington monuments and the Holocaust Museum, which was quite an engaging educational experiences for them. And the students definitely benefited from that experience, which added to their own professional development. Interestingly, in the following year, 2011, Lisa and the TOT members organized yet another trip, but this time to Colonial Williamsburg in Virginia. This trip exposed them to parts of this country's history they were not aware of and motivated them to learn more about. Now, these experiences help students recognize the value of being involved in off-campus educational trips. Now, students will share their own experiences of their trips to Boston and Cape Cod later, but I must mention of the recent visit of a group of TOT members to Wave Hill on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. This was yet another educational experience for them to relax and learn how to incorporate art and nature into their teaching. The experience was quite an enjoyable time for them as they spent time with Randy Brosen, their instructor. And finally, the TOT Homecoming event, which was held last spring in 2021, exemplified the type of close community TOT has become. And maybe it was the fact that many of them missed the opportunity to physically meet as they normally would and spend time together. But the occasion saw a special group of students, both current students and former TOT graduates, work tirelessly to craft a program that, although it was virtual, it gave them the opportunity to use their skills and interests to create an enjoyable and relaxing experience, which we all appreciated. It was really a fitting way for them to close the academic year and to once again celebrate a special moment among the memorable programs TOT has created over the many years to enhance the lives of students in the School of Education. It was indeed a special occasion for all.